minutes extra, that you had to wait, but Maharaj is ready. So on behalf of the School of Vedic Studies, we welcome you all for yet another session with His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj as part of our 12 Mahajans course. Today, Maharaj will be taking us through the Mahajan, that is the 11th Mahajan, Śukadeva Gosvāmī. So again, with a thankful heart, because it's indeed an honor, privilege, and a good fortune to have Maharaj with us, taking us through these wonderful sessions. So without much ado, we pass on the mic to Maharaj. Maharaj, over to you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jai. Om Jnana Trivindandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshusumritam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah Panchakalpa Trubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are going through the Mahajanas. This is the 11th Mahajan, Sri Śukadeva Gosvāmī. So it is interesting to know about Śukadeva Gosvāmī that this slide, of course, shows not Śukadeva Gosvāmī, but Srimati Radharani, and she's holding a little parrot in her hand. This parrot actually is her personal message carrier. This parrot used to carry messages between Krishna and Radharani. And eventually, when the pastimes of Vrindavan were winding up, the parrot, very dear to Radharani, was ready to go back to the spiritual world. But Radharani requested the parrot, no, you stay back. There is other service you got to render for me before you come back. So this is Radharani and her parrot. And I saw many different citations about how this parrot was Radharani's, and the parrot then became Śukadeva Gosvāmī. But I was not happy to use this story until and unless I found that there is some connection from the scriptures or cited by Srila Prabhupada. So in my research, I did find some connections. So as we go through the presentation, you will see that how this is connected and it is bona fide. So when Radha and Krishna wound off their pastimes in earth, they instructed their male parrot Sukha, who is Radharani's personal parrot, to stay back and speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. After they left, Sukha felt great separation, for while his Radharani was on earth, she would always speak to him about Krishna. He was daily hearing Krishna Katha. But now he was not getting any more stories or talks about Krishna, and so he became very unhappy. He felt he would die. Then once he heard that Lord Śiva speaks Bhagavatam in his abode, it so happens that Bhuvaneshwar is also considered Kailash, or Lord Śiva was there with his consort Parvati. So Lord Śiva is sitting in a nice forest in Bhuvaneshwar, which is also called Kailash. And as they were sitting there, and Śiva was speaking about the transcendental Bhagavatam, so Srila Śukadeva Gosvāmī heard Srimad Bhagavatam from 4 different personalities. This is interesting how we have understanding that Śukadeva Gosvāmī heard the Bhagavatam from his father, Srila Vyasadeva, but there is a citations where it's mentioned that he heard this Bhagavatam from 4 different personalities. So one is, of course, Lord Śiva. Second is Srila Dvaipanya Vyas, his father. Third is Sri Agastya Rishi. And fourth is Srila Narada Muni and Maharishi Devala. So these are all mentioned in the scriptures at different citations by Śukadeva Gosvāmī himself. So while Lord Shiva was speaking the Bhagavatam to Parvati, the Śukadeva in his parrot form came and sat on the tree. And as he was sitting on the tree, he was completely absorbed in this story told by Shiva. But Parvati was really interested in hearing the 10th canto, the pastimes of Krishna. Lord Shiva started with the first canto. And as she was speaking the first canto, Parvati was feeling a little drowsy and sleepy. So while she was listening to the Bhagavatam, she kept saying, And at some point, she fell asleep. And the parrot was thinking, if Shiva finds out she's asleep, he won't speak anymore. He started imitating Parvati's voice and saying, and Shiva continued. So some of our acharyas say that Śukadeva Gosvāmī heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Lord Shiva when he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to Goddess Parvati. So this is a citation where I got from the scriptures. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 24, text 3:1-3, it said that Aham Vedim Sukhavati Vyasa Viti Na Viti Va Bhaktya Bhagavatam Gayam Na Budhaya Na Cha Tikaya. So this is the translation word by word. And the translation says, Lord Shiva said, I know Śukadeva Gosvāmī, the son of Vyasadeva, may know, and Vyasadeva may know or may not know Srimad Bhagavatam. On the whole, Srimad Bhagavatam, the spotless Purana, can be learned only through devotional service, not by material intelligence, speculative methods, or imaginary commentaries. So here Lord Shiva is saying that Śukadeva Gosvāmī may know or may not know, Vyasadeva may know or not know, but he has a deep understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a spotless Purana. It can only be understood through devotional practices. Lord Shiva, Prabhupada is giving commentary now. Lord Shiva was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam before Goddess Parvati here in Ekmara Kanana. Kanana means forest. At that time, a parrot was listening. Sukha means parrot. At first, Parvati Devi was listening and saying, Then Parvati fell asleep. That parrot was listening and saying, So Lord Shiva continued. So Lord Shiva couldn't understand at first that Parvati Devi had fallen asleep. Then he noticed. So he thought, who was saying, He saw a parrot sitting there. So Lord Shiva ran to catch the parrot, but the parrot flew away. That Sukha then entered into the womb of Srila Vyasadeva's wife, Vitika. That parrot became Srila Śukadeva Gosvāmī. This is how Śukadeva Gosvāmī knows the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhuvaneshwar is such a famous place. It is known as Bhuvaneshwar Dham or Bhuvaneshwar Kshetra. This is a Vaishnava Kshetra. The parrot was now in the womb of Srila Vyasadeva's wife, Vitika, where he stayed for 16 years. After 16 years passed, Srila Vyasadeva said, Oh dear one, who are you? I don't know who you are. Why you are giving suffering to your mother? Please come out. So Sukadeva told Vyasadeva, I will not come into Maya. Srila Vyasadeva replied, I will remove this Maya. Please come out. I don't believe you. Who will believe you? Who will you believe? I will believe Krishna. If he will come and tell me to come out, I will do so. Krishna came there by the prayers of Vyasadeva and said, Oh my son, I am Krishna. I am removing Maya just for a moment. So please come out right now. So of course, Vyasadeva was in the womb of Vitika, the wife of Vyasadeva, and by the powers of prayers of Vyasadeva, Krishna manifested, and then he spoke to Sukadeva and said, yes, please come out now. You will be protected. So he comes out. Later, after 16 years, when Lord Krishna promised Sukadeva that he will not be captured by material energy, he came out of his mother's womb, he was again taught the Srimad Bhagavatam by his father Vyasadeva. Later, when he came to see Pariksit Maharaj, he spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to him. In the second canto, first chapter, 8th verse, it is said, at the end of Dwarpa Yoga, I studied this great supplement. Now, this is, of course, Śukadeva Gosvāmī saying how he got to know the Bhagavatam. I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas from my father, Srila Dvaipanya Vyas. So, of course, Vyasadeva was there, and then Śukadeva is hearing among other great sages, and he's learning the Srimad Bhagavatam from his father. The statement made by Srila Śukadeva Gosvāmī that the topmost transcendentalist, who is beyond the jurisdiction of regulations, restrictions, mainly takes to the task of hearing about the glorifying this personality of Godhead. Godhead is verified by his personal example. Śukadeva Gosvāmī, being recognized liberated soul and the topmost transcendentalist, was accepted by all of the topmost sages present in the meeting during the last 7 days of Maharaj Pariksit. He cites from the example of his life that he himself was attracted to the transcendental activities of the Lord, and he studied Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father, Srila Dvaipanya Vyas. Srimad Bhagavatam, or for that matter, any other scientific literatures, cannot be studied at home by one's own intellectual capacity. Medical books of anatomy or physiology are available in the market, but no one can become a qualified medical practitioner simply by reading such books at home. One has to be admitted to a medical college and study the books under the guidance of a learned professor. So this is Prabhupada giving elaborate explanation in the purport. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam, the postgraduate study of science of Godhead, can only be learned by studying it at the feet of a realized soul like Srila Vyasadeva. Although Śukadeva Gosvāmī was a liberated soul from the very day of his birth, he still had to take lessons of Srimad Bhagavatam from his great father. Srila Vyasadeva, who compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under the instructions of great soul, Sri Narada Muni. In the next verse, in next chapter 2, verse 2, saying, Srila Sutta Gosvami said, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the great sage Śukadeva Gosvāmī, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher caste, his father, Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, O my son, indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feeling of separation echoed the response, the grieved father. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described in the enlightened verses. So how Śukadeva Gosvāmī came back to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from his father when he left for the forest. When Srila Vyasadeva saw he was not able to bring back his son, he sent his disciple, asking them to recite 2 slokas from Srimad Bhagavatam, which he compiled after Narada Muni's instructions. So the disciples of Vyasadeva were instructed by him to speak particularly 2 chosen verses to Śukadeva Gosvāmī. And due to this, hearing these 2 verses, he became enticed. Oh, this is wonderful. I want to hear more. And then, of course, he comes back to his father. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the position of mother to the she-demon Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. So this is one of the verses which was recited to Śukadeva Gosvāmī, the disciples of Vyasadeva. And this is the second one. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue karnika flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and a Vajayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. These are the two verses which was recited to Śukadeva Gosvami, which interested him that, oh, I want to hear more, and therefore he came back. So Śukadeva Gosvami, hearing the divine transcendental pastimes of the Lord, came back and heard Srimad Bhagavatam from his father Srila Vyasadeva. While narrating Ajamal's story to Maharaj Pariksit, Srila Śukadeva Gosvami mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, chapter 3, text 35, that he also heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Agastya Rishi. So as we said in the beginning, he heard from 4 different personalities, the Lord Śiva, his father Vyasadeva, and this is the third one, Agastya Rishi, which Śukadeva Gosvami himself is saying that while he was hearing this story, he heard it from he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Agastya Rishi. When the great sage Agastya, the son of Kumbha, was residing in the Malaya hills and worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I approached him and he explained to me the confidential history. Sri Śukadeva Goswami said, O king, I shall speak to you the same history I heard from the mouth of Vyasadeva, Narada, and Devala. Please listen with attention. So this is, of course, Śukadeva Goswami speaking to Pariksit Maharaja and saying how he heard this transcendental Bhagavatam, and now he's going to recite that to Pariksit Maharaja and saying, please hear with attention. So that very Srimad Bhagavatam I shall recite before you because you are the most sincere devotee of Lord Krishna. One who gives full attention and respect to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam achieves unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation. Śukadeva Goswami is now speaking when Pariksit Maharaj, after being cursed, approached Śukadeva Goswami along with many great rishis who are interested in the transcendental subject matter, and they wanted to hear also. So they took advantage and heard it from Śukadeva Goswami, this transcendental subject matter. O king, constant chanting of the holy name of Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by the dint of transcendental knowledge. So here, of course, Śukadeva Goswami is saying the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is no doubt fearless and doubtless way for all success. And he says, including for those who are materialists, who have material desires and want to enjoy materially. At the same time, those who are self-satisfied by the dint of transcendental knowledge. This is applicable for both classes of men. So that very Srimad Bhagavatam is given to us by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami Prabhupada. So we are very fortunate that we have got the opportunity to hear and read Srimad Bhagavatam. Is given to us directly by Prabhupada. As is mentioned many times, that the fruit which is touched by the lips of the, or eaten by a parrot makes it more sweeter. So Śukadeva Goswami is the speaker of Bhagavatam, and then Prabhupada is giving the same Bhagavatam, so it becomes more sweeter for us. So Prabhupada spent a lot of time translating this transcendental knowledge in the form of the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which he gave to mankind for upliftment. The Srimad Bhagavatam is recognized Vedic wisdom. And the system of receiving Vedic knowledge is called Avaharo Pantha, or the process of receiving transcendental knowledge through bona fide disciplic succession. For advancement of material knowledge, there is need for personal ability and research aptitude. But in the case of spiritual knowledge, all progress depends more or less on the mercy of the spiritual master. The spiritual master must be satisfied with the disciple. Only then is the knowledge automatically manifested before the student of the spiritual science. So of course, here Prabhupada is saying that material knowledge, you need a material preceptor, professor, a learned teacher. But for spiritual knowledge, one must satisfy the spiritual master. When the spiritual master sees that the disciple is sincere, then of course he will give the knowledge, as we sing the morning prayers, that he opens our darkened eyes and fills our hearts with transcendental knowledge. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understood by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity. Now remember that this Bhagavatam is presented when Vyasadeva had written so many Puranas and he still wasn't very happy. Then under the instruction of his spiritual master, Sri Narada Muni, when he was very matured, Narada Muni instructed him that this is what you got to do. And then this in his maturity, he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and Vyasadeva wrote this in his maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scriptures? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Dharma, namely pious activities, artha, economic developments, kama, satisfaction of the senses, and moksha, liberation from material bondage. So this is generally a tendency of one who has little knowledge, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. How to perform these duties properly and execute it properly is the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Religion includes the primary subject, namely pious activities, economic development, satisfaction of the senses, and finally liberation from material bondage. Irreligious life is a barbarous condition. Indeed, human life begins when religion begins. Eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating are the four principles of animal life. These are common both to animals and to human beings. Religion is the extra function of the human being. Without religion, human life is no better than animal life. Therefore, in human societies, there is some form of religion which aims at self-realization and which makes references to man's eternal relationship with God. So in the first canto, first chapter, text 3, this is further explained. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature. It emanates from the lips of Śukadeva Gosvāmī. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already established for all, including liberated souls. In the two previous slokas, it has been definitely proven that Srimad Bhagavatam is a sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic literatures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this sloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only the superior literature, but it is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by Srimad Bhagavatam. These are very important instructions given by Prabhupada in this purport. Every living entity, beginning from Brahmā, the firstborn living being within the material world, down to the insignificant ant, desires to relish some sort of taste derived from sense perception. These sensual pleasures are technically called rasas. Such rasas are of different varieties. It is revealed in the scriptures the following 12 varieties of rasas are enumerated. So, of course, we are familiar with the 5 rasas, but here it is said in the Bhagavatam by Prabhupada, there are 12 rasas. So, these are the 12 rasas. First is Rudra, or in English, anger. Second is Adbhut, wonder. 3 is Shringara, conjugal love. 4 is Hasya, comedy. 5 is Vira, chivalry. 6 is Daya, mercy. 7 is Dasya, servitorship. 8 is Sakya, fertility. 9 is Bhayankar, horror. 10 is Vibhasta, shock. 11th is Santa, neutrality. And 12th is Vatsalya, parenthood. So the main 5 rasas which we understand are mentioned there. And within that, these others are included. So all total is 12. We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as the captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of human beings. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Śukadeva Gosvāmī, the spiritual master of all the sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkness region of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement of the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. So, of course, this is Sutta Goswami speaking in Naimisharanya, and this is the next when Bhagavatam is spoken by Sutta Goswami to the assembled Vaishnavas in Naimisharanya forest, and this was done for almost like 1,000 years. So he is giving credit to Śukadeva Gosvami and saying that he learned this by experience. So in this praise, Sutta Goswami practically summarizes the complete introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural supplementary commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra or the Brahma Sutras were compiled by Vyasadeva with the view to presenting just the cream of Vedic knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentary of this cream. Srila Śukadeva Goswami was a thoroughly realized master of the Vedanta Sutra, and consequently, he also personally realized the commentary, Srimad Bhagavatam, and just to show his boundless mercy upon bewildered materialist men who want to cross completely over near science, he recited for the first time this confidential knowledge. So before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means to conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the topmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So of course, this verse is many times chanted in the Srimad Bhagavatam class before we start speaking. And it is very important that we show respect and honor to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then Narayan Rishi, and then Saraswati, and of course, Vyasadeva, the author. That way you will get the blessings of the different personalities to actually go deep into the subject matter of Bhagavatam. The supreme occupation, dharma, of all humanity is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Generally, it is said that bhakti cult is meant for Sudras, Vaishyas, and the less intelligent women class. But that is not the actual fact. The bhakti cult is the topmost of all transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. It is sublime for pure devotees who are serious about getting in contact with the Supreme Lord. So, of course, there is this thing that many people say, oh, this chanting and serving God is for these lower class people. But the higher class Brahmanical, intellectuals, their business is to discuss, and basically, Prabhupada says, to speculate about the Supreme Lord. But here, Prabhupada is saying the bhakti cult is the topmost transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. So it is the very sublime process which is applicable to the most intellectual or most learned, to the most unintelligent and less knowledgeable person. Is equally applicable to all of us, because hearing this transcendental subject will enlighten us. And it is easy for the neophytes who are just on the threshold of the house of bhakti to achieve contact of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Krishna is a great science, and it is open for all living beings, including the Sudras, Vaishyas, women, and even those lower than low-born Sudras. So what to speak of the highest class of men, like the qualified Brahmanas and great self-realized kings? O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to the caste division and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Human society all over the world is divided into 4 castes and 4 orders of life. The 4 castes are the intelligent caste, the martial caste, the productive caste, and the labor caste. These castes are classified in terms of one's work and qualification and not by birth. So of course, Prabhupada is saying very clearly here that this so-called caste system of the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras are not only in India, but it is all over the world. This human society is class-based everywhere. These classes do exist. Of course, we give them different names. But Prabhupada makes a very important point here that it is not by birth, it is by work and qualification. Then again, there are 4 orders of life, namely the student life, the householder life, the retired, and the devotional life. In the best interest of human society, there must be such division of life. Otherwise, no social institution can grow in a healthy state. And in each and every one of the above mentioned divisions of life, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the personality of Godhead. So of course, Prabhupada is saying that these are 4 orders and 4 caste system are everywhere, prominent all over the world. However, you may call them by different names, but it is there, and it is only there for one purpose, and that is to raise these persons. And as Prabhupada says, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. If realization of the absolute truth is the ultimate aim of life, it must be carried out by all means. In any one of the above mentioned castes or orders of life, the 4 processes, namely glorifying, hearing, remembering, and worshipping, are general occupations. Without these principles of life, no one can exist. Activities of living being involves engagement in these 4 different principles of life. So again, Prabhupada is emphasizing that these are very important aspects one must practice in one's life in order to get self-realization, is namely glorifying and hearing, remembering and worshipping of the Supreme Lord. With the sword in hand, intelligent man can cut through binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? The contact of spiritual spark with material elements creates a knot which must be cut if one wants to be liberated from the actions and reactions of routine work. Liberation means freedom from the cycle of reactionary work. This liberation automatically follows for one who constantly remembers the transcendental pastimes, the personality of Godhead. This is because all the activities of the Supreme Lord, his Leelas, are transcendental to the modes of material energy. They are all attractive spiritual activities, and therefore constant association of with the spiritual activities of the Supreme Lord gradually spiritualizes the conditioned soul and ultimately severes the knot of material bondage. Liberation from material bondage is therefore a byproduct of devotional service. This is a very interesting point Srila Prabhupada is making here, that liberation is not the aim, it is the byproduct of devotional service. Devotional service is to be connected to the Supreme Lord, and that is where you get the higher taste and attraction to the Supreme Lord. And as a byproduct, Krishna throws in that liberation. So liberation is not our aim, but pleasing the Supreme Lord by the spirit of devotional service. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire of material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his message, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. So this verse is very, very important from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. This is the canto, the chapter is saying the lessons of self-realization. And here, Śukadeva Gosvāmī is very clearly saying, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, the super soul in everyone's heart, is a benefactor of the truthful devotee. Cleanses desire for material enjoyments from the heart of a devotee who has developed the urge to hear his message. We have to understand that once we develop the urge to hear this transcendental message of the Lord, then automatically cleansing of the heart takes place when it is done properly, heard properly and chanted. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non different from him. Whenever therefore offenseless hearing, glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of the transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his Sixastikam, declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. This is again important point Prabhupada is making. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of his transcendental sound. But unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's names and activities. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to a pure devotee, all that is troublesome in the heart is almost completely destroyed. The loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable fact. Again, this also we chant Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya in the Srimad Bhagavatam class before reciting the Bhagavatam, and it's saying that by regularly attendance of Bhagavatam and by rendering service to a pure devotee, that all that is troublesome in the heart is almost completely destroyed. Loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised the transcendental song, is established as irrevocable fact. So we understand this, and many times we devotees say, how I can develop this mood? Here is the secret. Simply follow these words to the letter, then you will develop transcendental relationship with the Lord and attraction for devotional service. Again, Prabhupada is saying in the purport, here is a remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart, which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavatas. There are two types of Bhagavatas, namely the book Bhagavat and the devotee Bhagavat. Both Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them or either of them can be good enough to eliminate obstacles. A devotee Bhagavat is as good as the book Bhagavat because the devotee Bhagavat leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavat. And the book Bhagavat is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, who are also Bhagavatas. Book Bhagavat and the person are identical. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of the nature's modes of passion, ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy. So of course, again here, the secret is given that when that loving service to the Lord is established in the heart, then the effects of the modes of nature, especially passion, ignorance, are lifted. And this generally the mode of passion, ignorance manifests in form of lusty desires, hankering for sense gratification, will disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness. And goodness is, of course, the first step in rising to go on a transcendental platform of pure goodness, that is Visuddha Sattva. So he becomes completely happy. From the beginning to the end, Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations that encourage renunciation of material life, as well as nectarian accounts of the Lord Hari's transcendental pastimes, which give ecstasy to the saintly devotees and the demigods. Now again, here is very important aspect to understand that hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is not only giving ecstasy to the devotees and saintly people, even the demigods. Even demigods take great interest in hearing the transcendental subject matter of the Supreme Lord. This Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy because its subject matter is absolute truth, which while non-different from the spirit soul, is the ultimate reality, one without a second. The goal of this literature is exclusive devotional service unto the supreme truth. Just as Ganga is the greatest of the river of all rivers, Lord Achyuta is the supreme among deities, and Lord Shambhu, Shiva, is the greatest of all Vaishnavas. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the greatest of all Puranas. So Srimad Bhagavatam is placed very highly in the hierarchy of all literatures, that this is the topmost literature. And one who develops taste for this has achieved everything. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaishnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramhamsas. This Bhagavatam reveals the means of becoming free from all material works, together with process of transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. I meditate upon that pure and spotless, supreme, absolute truth, who is free from suffering and death, and who is the beginning personally, who is being personally revealed, this incomparable torchlight of knowledge. In the beginning, he's revealing this knowledge, incomparable torchlight of knowledge to Brahmā. Brahmā then spoke it to the sage Narada, who narrated it to Krishna, Dvaipan, and Vyas. Srila Vyasadeva revealed this Bhagavatam to the greatest sage Śukadeva Gosvāmī, and Sukadeva mercifully spoke it to Pariksit Maharaja. I offer my humble obeisances unto Sri Śukadeva Gosvāmī, the best of mystic sages and the personal manifestation of the absolute truth. He saved Maharaj Pariksit, who was beaten by the snake of material existence. So this is the end of the presentation. And we'll now open up for any questions or any comments.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So thank you very much. And again, we will look forward to hands being raised for questions, comments, and reflections. We have Anupama Radharani Mataji. So Anupama Mataji, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. Maharaj, thank you for this lovely class. You had mentioned, this in this verse we say Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam. So in this translation, it's given Nara Narayan Rishi. Are these two different people? Or, sometimes I've seen them mentioned as one. Like in this shlok also, they're mentioned as one. So are these two different people or is it just one? Thank you, Maharaj.
You have to understand, Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Nar Narayan is the human being who has come in the form of Narayan. In other words, he is representing the Supreme Lord. So sometimes it is said that Krishna, Arjuna are like that, Nar and Narayan. So you cannot separate the two in that way. So that's why it's mentioned as one. But generally, Krishna is not without his devotee, and his devotee is not without Krishna. So when the words Nar Narayan is used, my understanding is that there is inseparable, they are not separable at all. Krishna is never without his devotees, and devotees are never without Krishna. So this is the connection of Nar and Narayan. The Narayan, the Supreme Lord, and Nar as a human being, they are inseparable, Krishna and his devotee. At least that is my understanding.
Okay, so should we should we understand this to mean that they are two different, because Narayan, refers to Lord Krishna and Nara refers to Arjuna. So, but uh, in spirit they are one, like in purpose they are one, but they are actually two different entities.
There are two different personalities. Just like when we say Radha Krishna, although, transcendently speaking, Radharani is the internal potency of the Lord, which is manifested as Radharani. But at the same time, there are two personalities. Krishna is Krishna and Radha is Radha. You cannot not say Radharani is Krishna and Krishna is Radharani. But they are, in a transcendental sense, they are one. Just like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes as a combination of Radha and Krishna as one. But still, there's two personalities in one. So in the marketplace, we see, two in one. So I would say that this is how we see that Nar Narayan is like that, two personalities, but they're inseparable because, as I said, it is unthinkable to separate Krishna from his devotees. And devotees is also unthinkable to separate from Krishna, because you cannot exist without the other. That is your life air. So for a devotee, at least, for a materialist who is under illusion, thinks that he is separated energy, and therefore he is connecting himself with the material world or material existence. And he can live and exist without God, as Prabhupada says, but he will be struggling. So when you connect with the Supreme Lord in the right spirit, then you will stop your struggle of existence and it will become natural. I hope that clears. At least that is my understanding.
Yes, Maharaj. That was a wonderful answer. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Anupama Mataji. And we have now Subal Prabhu. Subal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept
Hare
my
Krishna,
humble
Hare
obeisances.
Krishna.
Thank you so much for your wonderful class as always. You picked up so many different points about Śukadeva Gosvāmī and his instructions and Bhagavatam from so many places all over Bhagavatam. It was good to get it assimilated and learn it at one single point. Maharaj, I have one question about Śukadeva Gosvāmī. Now, as I understand, Śukadeva Gosvāmī was a parrot and he was seated on a tree when Mahadev Shankar was speaking Bhagavatam to Parvati Mata. And meaning when Parvati Mata was asleep while listening, then Shankar could still hear a kind of a humkar, like as a response to Mahadev's statements. And when Mahadev realized that she is sleeping, but still there is somebody who's responding, and he searched and he saw this parrot and he ran to kill the parrot. And then the parrot ran all around and took the shelter in the, he went into the mouth of the wife of Vyasdev. And then from there he took birth and came out as a son of Vyasdev. Now, my question is basically that we understood, and it is mentioned in quite a few places, that Śukadeva Gosvāmī was impersonal devotee first, of the impersonal absolute Brahman. So, and then later when Vyasdev spoke Bhagavatam, and then he was attracted and then he became a devotee of the personal aspect of Lord Krishna. So question is, despite learning Bhagavatam from Mahadev before, how could he become a devotee of impersonal aspect? How could he not have that personal meaning realization and become a devotee of the personal aspect of the Lord even before entering into the womb of the wife of Vyasdev?
Well, I don't think I have come across that he was an impersonal. Because see, from the very beginning, as a parrot, he was privy to the transcendental pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and he was a messenger. And of course, later on, when he heard the Bhagavatam from Lord Śiva, And then he went into the womb of Vitika, the wife of Vyasadeva, and manifest himself as a human child in the womb. He was afraid to come out, that if he comes out, he will be affected by the material energy. Therefore, he wanted to stay in. And then immediately, as soon as he came out, he ran away. Now, the question is, if he was impersonalist, how would he say from the womb of the mother's womb that I cannot come out unless Vyasadeva said, how will you come out? And say, unless Krishna comes in personally tells me. So that one slide I showed was a depiction of Lord Krishna in front of the impregnated Vitika. And then Krishna says, this is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, that Krishna says, I will remove momentarily this covering of Maya to come out. And then he agrees to come out. And then when he comes out, he says, I'm having none of this attachment to anything. I'm going to run away from here into the deep forest and just meditate. But then when he heard the sound vibration, these two slokas which I mentioned, which is there in the Bhagavatam, he said, oh, I want to hear more about it. So where is the question of Śukadeva Gosvāmī being impersonalist? There is no question of being impersonalist or Brahmavadi. He was fully self-realized soul. At least that is my understanding. I have never come across where he's described. The four Kumāras, of course, they were Brahmavadis, not Mayavadis, but Brahmavadis, that they had that Brahman concept of the Lord, all pervasive form of the Lord, until they smelled the fragrance from the lotus feet of the Lord, and then they were blessed by the Lord to become personalists. But Śukadeva Gosvāmī was always, as I said, made so many citations from the Bhagavatam, that he was fully self-realized. And if you are fully self-realized, then there's no question of having that impersonal or Brahmavadi concept. That is my understanding.
Okay, Maharaj, okay. Because I thought, I read in some places where Srila Prabhupada himself has written that Śukadeva Gosvāmī and the four Kumāras were the two who were Brahmavadis, who later became the devotees of the personal aspect. I just don't recollect where exactly I read that, but
okay,
that's what I thought.
So I will look into it, and if you find that particular quotation, you kindly send it to me.
Sure, Maharaj.
Look into it, but I haven't come across that, because when I'm reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I have not come across that kind of statements. Of course, the four Kumāras I have come across, but Śukadeva Gosvāmī I haven't.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you, Subal Prabhu. Apurva just found one reference, Maharaj, 219, second canto, first chapter, 9th verse, which says, O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. And then Prabhupada explains the absolute truth. He explains that how the absolute truth is realized as the impersonal Brahman at the first instance by philosophical speculation, and later as the super soul by further progress of transcendental knowledge. But he's telling Pariksit Maharaj that he was always perfectly situated in transcendence and was also attracted to the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord.
So that's
this
clear,
is
no?
to underscore. This is to underscore what you were saying.
Yeah. So this I'm saying. I did cite that particular verse also in the presentation, that Śukadeva Gosvāmī is a self-realized soul. But of course, you have to understand that when he is also speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam, he's step by step leading different personalities who are at different levels to the highest stage.
That's right.
No.
That's right. So that verse, Subal Prabhu, basically that's what Maharaj was actually referring to. And then there is a conversation, what Anupama Radharani Mataji asked, where Prabhupada, again underscoring what you said, Maharaj, that Naranaran Rishi was a Sakyavesh avatar. He was a Rishi. It was a personality. That's what Prabhupada in one of the conversations he's explaining about Naranaran Rishi. There was a question similar to what Anupama Mataji asked. Maharaj, I have one
Thank you, Prabhuji.
question. Okay, Anupama Mataji, you've raised your hand, so we'll go to you first. Then I want to ask something. So speak on, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Maharaj, you said the demigods also get transcendental pleasure in hearing the Bhagavatam. So is the Bhagavatam recited and discussed in the higher planetary systems, and do they have more information about transcendence than what is available here on earth?
For sure. Because see, we are, privy to the Bhagavatam, which is given to us by Vyasadeva through Śukadeva Gosvāmī. But these pastimes are going on from the very beginning, and we don't have access to all the pastimes. I mean, if you go into the different Puranas, then it will stretch you to different millenniums and what took place in different millenniums and so forth. But Srimad Bhagavatam, as presented to us by Vyasadeva, is that he took all the cream, the essence of all which is required for self-realization. And that is what is given to us. But in the higher planetary system and in the other universes also, there are Bhagavatams which we don't have access to. So there are, Bhagavatam is unlimited Purana. It is ongoing. Even they are saying that Vyasadeva is an eternal personality who is still writing in the caves of the Himalayas in Badrinarayan, where you go in Vyas Gufa. He's sitting there with transcendental personality Ganesh and still writing. And we don't have access to it because whatever we have right now, we cannot comprehend that much. What to speak of, we are overwhelmed with something more. But just to clarify your point, that of course this Bhagavatam is spoken in different places by different personalities, and in the higher planetary system also they have much more deeper understanding and also capacity to know more. And in other universes also there are Bhagavatams. So Bhagavatam is not limited to this planet Earth; it is everywhere. Also, like last week we heard about Bali Maharaja, that Sutala planet was specially created by the Lord to accommodate Bali Maharaja. Although it is considered a hellish planet, but in that planet, in the hellish regions, there is no misery, there is no death, there is no fear, there is no old age, just happiness and happiness, because the Lord is personally present there in that planet. So like that, Srimad Bhagavatam is unlimited. But what we have is the cream of the Vedic knowledge. If you go deeper, then there are many citations on different Puranas. But I would not go so far to go into other Puranas because I don't have faith in those Puranas in a sense that they are not bona fidely translated. They may be translated by people who are not self-realized. But for us, as I presented in the middle of my presentation, Srimad Bhagavatam is given to us by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada, an absolutely self-realized personality, and there is no question of any doubt in his presentation. Anybody else who has presented it, I would take it with a pinch of salt because I don't know them, that how purely it is presented. But at least for Prabhupada, we can have full faith, 100%, beyond doubt, that it is perfectly presented to us. And as Prabhupada said, this is sufficient for you to become self-realized and go back home, back to Godhead.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. So this one there.
Maharaj, we have, before I call upon Subal Prabhu, we had Gaurangi Gopi Mataji. Gaurangi Mataji, Hare Krishna, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Prabhu, Dhanvat pranams to you. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my most respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Maharaj, I had this doubt for so many times. I've repeatedly asked these questions to so many of them. Actually, they were discussing, I have read in somewhere that, I mean, I will also work on it, that Śukadeva Gosvāmī was impersonal, and that is why he didn't want to leave the womb of his mother. He was in the womb of his mother for 16 years. And that's why he was within the womb of his mother. That's what I had heard. And later he became a devotee. That's what I have understood. I want to ask Maharaj, related to this, that is this an evolutionary process that every soul who has fallen, like how from lower species of life we get the human birth, and then we are impersonalist, and then we become devotees of the Lord? Is this an evolutionary process? Though we have taken to the process of bhakti, still a tinge of impersonalism is there in our heart, and something like that. Maharaj, I just want to ask you.
No, this is not an evolutionary thing, but just like you see, I'll give an example, an analogy, that when you are a small young child, 5-year-old, you go to kindergarten school. And then as you go older, you go to the next level, primary school, then secondary school, and then university. So each level of education, you are exposed to a little bit more deeper knowledge of the same subject. But the kindergarten level, you are given just the very basic things. So, we're getting some echoing. Yeah, so, this is how it is. It is not an evolutionary thing. And there is mention in the Nectar of Devotion, when Prabhupada is commenting on Nectar of Devotion on Rupa Goswami's writings, they're saying that anybody who comes to Krishna consciousness, it is not by some chance, but they have accredited in their past life or past lives to come to this level. So when we come to this life, at some stage, we are still under the influence of material energy, but that very quickly, by some catalyst which comes into effect, removes that darkness, and immediately you get the guidance to the right path, and then you follow that. Just like, most of us, when we became fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, took it seriously, we were at best maybe a good Hindu, or had some concept, yes, God is there, or a good person. But that was because we were covered by material energy. And then along comes a devotee of Krishna. Either he speaks to you, or he gives you one of the literature, or you hear some transcendental kirtan through Sankirtan process, and immediately the darkness is dissipated from the heart, and the reality is there in front of you. You take to the process very immediately. So taking to devotional service and accepting Krishna is like a duck taking to the water. You don't have to teach the ducklings who are just hatched from the egg and they're following the mother. The mother is swimming in the lake, and the little ducklings who have just hatched moments before will quite happily go into the water and swim, because it comes natural to them. So similarly, this devotional service is like that, that when the darkness is dissipated, then it becomes natural for us to take to Krishna consciousness. And in terms of, you are saying that Sukadeva Gosvami was impersonal, and that is why he didn't want to come out, where I said in my presentation very clearly that he was afraid that the material energy, the illusionary energy will impact him if he comes out in the material world. Therefore, the womb is the safest place where this material energy cannot touch you, because you are protected in the womb of the mother. As soon as you come out, then you get influenced by the material energy. And that is why Śukadeva Gosvami said, I don't want to come out. And that is the reason he stayed in the womb for 16 years. Otherwise, he would have come out straight away. I hope that clarifies your query.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, there are references that Subal Prabhu has is sharing from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 7th chapter, 11th verse in the purport. There is also mention in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 18th chapter, 16th verse, where there is a mention by Srila Prabhupada where he says, I'm quoting what Prabhupada is saying, Śukadeva Gosvāmī was also an impersonalist in the beginning, as he himself has admitted in the Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada quotes to 2nd Canto, 1st chapter, 9th verse. But later on, he was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord and thus became a devotee. Such devotees with perfect knowledge are called Mahabhagavats. The context of the verse, Maharaj, is that it was by the mercy of Śukadeva Gosvāmī who imparted the transcendental knowledge to Pariksit Maharaj, which led to the attainment of love of Godhead for Pariksit Maharaj. Prabhupada in the purport further says that an impersonalist can become a Mahabhagavat, but a pure devotee of the Lord never comes back and becomes an impersonalist. So I think these mentions are there, and that's what the devotees are referring to. Now, Maharaj, with your kind permission, if I could offer just one small explanation.
Sure.
Actually, it really doesn't matter whether Śukadeva Gosvāmī Maharaj was an impersonalist or not. The fact of the matter is, he delivered Pariksit Maharaj, the personality who approached him at the time of death, or when he was at least cursed that he's going to die in 7 days. And he got the ultimate attainment of the highest, as they say, the zenith of self-realization is to attain to the lotus feet of the Lord, the love of the Lord. And that's what matters. And that's what we need to imbibe. So therefore, closing this dialogue on this subject at this, I want to ask something building upon this that Maharaj very kindly, and then we'll come back to you, Subal Prabhu, if time permits. Actually, we have already gone 40 minutes past 8. But there is one pressing, question I have, because Maharaj referred to the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 13th chapter, which is the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, verse number 11 and 12. In that very clearly, Srimad Bhagavatam, in the text of the verse, it is said that the Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations that encourage renunciation of material life. And then it also gives the goal, the prayojan, which is the goal of this literature is exclusive devotional service unto the Supreme Truth, which Prabhupada then explains is love of Godhead. So my, very humbly, the question, Maharaj, is, or rather more than a question, I would like you to kindly illuminate on the importance, because the purport starts with Vairagya. Because to get to Krishna, you have to leave. You can't have the love of everything around us, the things and everything that is extensions of this body, and yet try to pursue the highest goal of self-realization is to attain love of Krishna. So the importance of Vairagya in the life of a devotee, if you could kindly illuminate on, Maharaj, I'll be grateful. Thank you.
You see, we have to understand, what does renunciation mean? Now, we may have some very lofty, romantic ideas of renunciate is someone who has given up everything and gone into a depth of the forest and living under a tree. That is one aspect of renunciation. But Rupa Goswami has given a different concept of renunciation. That renunciation is of yukta vairagya. Utility is the principle, as Prabhupada says. So, if you utilize everything that is material around you simply to assist you in your devotional service and a higher understanding, then that is real renunciation. But if you use that which is material around you for your sense gratification, then that is not called renunciation. It is called just sense enjoyer. So we take example of Prabhupada. Prabhupada, the greatest renunciate. At the same time, if you look at his lifestyle, what did he renounce? He was living in a nice house. He was traveling in nice cars. He was flying in aeroplanes. He was wearing silk clothes. And of course, devotees out of love would bring very opulent food to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada as a spiritual master would concede to that and accept some of their offerings. Although Prabhupada knew that it is not good for his health, but he accepted opulent food. So in other words, what did he renounce? But Prabhupada said, use everything that which comes to you in the service of Krishna. And that is where Prabhupada was an expert renunciate, that he utilized every single thing in the service of the Lord. And he is such an expert person that he could find even the most useless thing, materially speaking, use it in Krishna's service. And therefore, when you use that in Krishna's service, it becomes transcendental, and it is called vairagya or renounce. You renounce. That's why, again, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, karmani eva adhikarastu ma phaleshu kadachin. Karmani eva adhikaras, your adhikar, it is your duty to perform your karma. You act, because nobody can be free of action. But ma phaleshu kadachin, don't be attached to the results. So we have to understand that real renunciation is that when we learn the ability to utilize everything for the purpose of the Supreme Lord, that is called real renunciation. But anything other than that, we utilize for our self comfort, for our own gratification, then of course it is material sense gratification. So we have to understand what is the true spirit of the word renunciation. Otherwise, if you go by the pure definition of renunciate, means he has given up everything, then it doesn't fit into the spirit of devotion. Because if you give up everything, you also give up Krishna. Why be attached to Krishna then? You're detached completely. But you cannot. So you transcendentalize everything in connection to the Supreme. So there's a tadiyanam samachara, that everything which is connected with the Supreme is transcendental. And that is where this renunciation comes of understanding, that try to relate everything to Krishna or in the service of Krishna. And therefore, then you will not become attached to those objects. They will be used for the pleasure of Krishna. And when you're using those things for the pleasure of Krishna, the beauty of this is that you also partake as you can say the mercy or prasadam of Krishna. Like living in a temple, it's a very opulent temple, and it is the home of Krishna, but you're also staying in there serving Krishna. So you also get to stay in the temple of Krishna, although it is not your home. It's not there for your gratification. But Krishna says, okay, you're serving me, I'll give you a little spot here as my reciprocation. I will not tell you that I will live in the opulent temple and you go and live under a tree. So we have to see this in a real spirit. And of course, we discussed this in the previous Mahajans, citing many examples of renunciates, like the 6 Goswamis, especially Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. They came from a very, very wealthy background. They gave up everything for Krishna. Later on, when everything came back to them, what did they do? They became so expert to utilize everything in the service of Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna. And this is called renunciation. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, because what you have explained, Prabhupada, is saying in the purport, In a similar vein, he says, Vairagya renunciation means giving up everything that has no relation with the absolute truth. So that means use everything in relation to the absolute truth, in relation to Krishna, as you rightly.
Krishna, and Rupa Goswami says that which is not usable, at least in your capacity for Krishna's pleasure, reject it.
Right.
Don't keep
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Wonderful. We still have Subal Prabhu, just for the sake of the time, but quickly, you still have a comment. Please go ahead, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for that wonderful question. Excellent question, and Maharaj, excellent answer. Thank you so much. Maharaj, I just don't want to go back on that point about impersonality and all that, so I'll not touch upon that. Maharaj, I had this other question about Śukadeva Gosvami, meaning his life after Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken to Maharaj Pariksit. That is generally not known what happened after, meaning what happened to him after that. Would you be able to shed some light there?
Well, I also don't have any information really, but I did touch on one point where Śukadeva Gosvami is saying that he was wandering in different places, meeting up different saintly persons. And I said in the beginning, there are 4 persons whom he heard the Bhagavatam from, and one was in the Malayan hills where he met Agastya Rishi, and he heard from him the pastime of Ajamil, which we'll be discussing next week in Yamraja's section. But this was spoken to Pariksit Maharaj, and he's saying that this is what I had heard from here. So he went and met many people, and then there isn't much information, really speaking, in the script, in the Bhagavatam, or for that matter, any other citations of where Śukadeva Gosvami went. I would assume that he was eager to go back to the spiritual world, and mysteriously as he appeared, he disappeared.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, Śukadeva Gosvami has perpetually left the Srimad Bhagavatam for anyone who's interested to go back home, back to Godhead. I'm quite sure that's all he wanted also as his final destination.
Well, I did say in the beginning that he wanted to go back to the spiritual world, and Radharani says, no, you got to do something for me.
Right.
Because speak the Bhagavatam for eternity. I mean, there was no need for Sukadeva to come. Vyasadeva is there. Vyasadeva could have presented the Bhagavatam. But there is a special pastimes where, as the great devotees of the Lord wants to use them for a particular mission of his work. And that is why he chose probably Śukadeva Gosvami, that, yeah, I want you to speak the Bhagavatam, not Vyasadeva. But there were many other qualified persons at the time also who could have spoken Bhagavatam.
You're right, Maharaj, because the Lord has a plan. Like, for example, he wanted Arjuna to do what he wanted him to do so that the Bhagavad Gita could be spoken as part of the Bhīṣma Parva of Mahabharata. Then in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna wanted Bhīṣma Dev to also give instructions to Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, and he graced the occasion by his own presence. So the Lord always has a plan to glorify his devotees, and these are part of his pastimes, that he wants some personality to come and do that task on his behalf, where he's very sure that not only the devotee is glorified, but that pure devotee also glorifies the Lord, because that's the sum and substance of that relationship.
Well, that is the transcendental nature of Krishna saying.
Absolutely.
And he is happy to see his devotees become glorious.
Yes, indeed.
That is what makes him glorious.
Absolutely. Maharaj, thank you so much. Subal Prabhu, thank you very much for this exchange. It was very illuminating, and we had wonderful illuminations from Maharaj. But thanks also for the participation of Subal Prabhu, Anupama Mataji, and Gaurangi Mataji. And we also encourage all the other assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis to also do ask questions or share your reflections and comments. So on that note, we will end the session today. It has gone 21 minutes more than our stipulated time, but you know, this is the wonder of Krishna consciousness. Time flies. We get absorbed. Maharaj, you want to say something?
No. I've also lost 1 hour.
Is it? Oh, yeah. That's right.
Now in the summertime.
Yes, you've got a daylight saving. Yes, Maharaj, absolutely.
So for me, it's coming close to 6 o'clock in the evening.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, in the previous sessions, it would have been 5.
Yes.
Yes. Maharaj, thank you very much for your continuing to be so kind upon all of us with your association and the wonderful sessions and illuminations that you bring forth into the hearts, minds, and intellect of all of us. They go a long way in helping us in our own spiritual paths. And I thank from the bottom of my heart all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis for your wonderful participation and staying on with us. Please continue to bless us with your participation, and also the fact that we can continue our sessions with Maharaj post the Mahajan course also. We will come back to you very soon on that. So on that note, we will end the session. His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj ki divine grace.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna. Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam.
Sapoti Vaishnava Jai.
Hare Maharaja. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare
All videos. And I'll do a quick roll call and let's have a Hari Hari with Maharaj. Anupama Radharani Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So much.
Siva Yogan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. I'm Sri Chaitanya Dev Das
Hare Krishna.
from Switzerland. Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yogeshwar Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat pranam.
Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Tirthraj Prabhu. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Hare
You're
Krishna.
muted, Prabhu. Achra Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat pranam ji.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Maharaj, Achra Mataji's husband, you know, Vijay Mehta Prabhu, he's been transferred, or he's got his occupation now is in Salala, which is the southern tip of Oman.
Oh,
So he comes only 2 weekends to Oman. So
Not only weekend, Prabhuji, only after 15 days, just
Only
for 2 days, 1 or 2 days. Ji.
well, commitment to life also is there, you know. Maintaining your life is not easy.
Ji. Thank
and we have Murlidhar Prabhu and Anasuya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
And we have Nitya Narasimha Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj, for enlightening Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
And we have Prabhanjan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
We had Brajnath Prabhu. And what happened to your
Hare
video?
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dandavat pranam Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Very nice lecture Maharaj.
Vrindavan Sham Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Kuldipika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for enlightening us.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
And Hare Krishna Maharaj to everyone, for all those who couldn't switch on the videos. It'll be nice that in the end everyone switches on. So that, so we have
Hare
Manoj.
Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Atmani Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
And Manoj Prabhu. You're muted, Manoj Prabhu. We have Radha Priya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Gurudev and Vartana.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
All right. So yeah, I think we have KD Sharma.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Namaskar Maharaj.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, Maharaj, we're not going to hold you longer. We've taken a lot of your time. Thank you very much for your wonderful association, Maharaj. And we also pray for you to stay safe and healthy. And let us all pray for everyone. So 3 times with Maharaj. Maharaj after you. Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Devahūti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai, Jagad Guru ki jai, Hari Hari
Ancha kalpatarubhyascha Hare Krishna.
All those devotees.